Hello and welcome to the Friday morning briefing from the Hearts Standard. It is Derby weekend. Hearts host Hibs at Tynecastle Park at 3 p.m. tomorrow. It's not on TV, but it is a sellout, and it's sure to be a raucous afternoon in EH11. I am joined by James to look ahead to the Derby, what we can expect from Hibs, what we can expect from Hearts. So I think the best place to start would be Hearts. What are you thinking in terms of kind of system and personnel? What would be your 11 off the cuff for tomorrow? Would you stick with the system that Naismith deployed in Ross County, the 3-1-4-2? If we're going to go into specifics, or would you expect him, or would you go back to our back four?
Earlier this week, I was I thought it'd be the 4-2-3-1. I was like, I think we'll stick with that because it's a bit more forward thinking, it's a bit more aggressive, and obviously that's the kind of stuff you want to do in a derby. But having then read your excellent analysis piece on Hibs this morning, I'm now dithering on that because, as you point out, as we're going to talk about, Boyle and Yuan both like to drift inside, and then that essentially gives Hibs a front four in very central areas. And I think that a back three with the Neuenhoff sitting at the base of midfield, that might, or perhaps even Beningame, that might be the best way to get around that. That might be the best way to combat that, because I think that, like you say, Hibs, they do essentially play with a front four, and because of that, I think basically leaving the man for man in the 4-2-3-1, I think that's maybe asking for trouble, because you just need Boyle to beat his man one time with his pace, or Yuan on the other side to beat his man once, and all of a sudden they're in. So I think, as I said earlier in the week, I thought Naismith would probably revert back to the back four, but having thought about it a bit more, I think we could well see. I think he probably will end up sticking with the back three, particularly because they've played it the last 120 minutes or so with football. So you'd think that's partly done with the derby in mind as well, just to get the players in the system and used to it and all that. So I'm as I say, you've converted me.
I look at this two ways in terms of the back three. I look at it as suiting Hearts and the defenders that are available at the moment, and it also suits the game that we're going into against Hibs. And I think there's an element of pride in your Hearts, and you dominate the derby, and in that way you don't want to tweak your formation or how you play to combat the opposition. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just being smart and giving yourself the best chance to win, because essentially when it comes down to it, Hearts fans, they just want to see the team win the derby, and that is the most important thing. And I think the best way to do that is to have that solid platform. I just think we've looked a lot more solid, a lot more steady, balanced with that back three, and certainly against Ross County. And like I said, after conceding the goal against Kilmarnock, I rewatched a fair bit of Frankie Kent since he's moved to Hearts for a piece that was on the site earlier in the week, and he really, like Craig Halkett before him, he stepped into Craig Halkett's shoes, but he really suits the back three, and that he's the way he can read the game, the way he can support and cover both Sibbick and Rolls, and he gets himself some really good defensive positions, because he's in a back four. You have to engage with forwards a wee bit more, whereas Kent is more standoffish, but in a good way. He likes to see how games develop, then react, and the centre of the back three just suits him perfectly. And then you've got Sibbick and Rolls, who, as centre backs, I think they suit the wide positions much better. Again, similarly, they're not having to come up into defensive duels loads and loads. They can step out, and both of them are very adept at covering the flanks where the Hibs could look to exploit if Hearts did play a back four. And then you're moving forward, and because again with the big with way Hibs play is that one of their strikers, whether it's sometimes two, whether it's Lafondra or Venti, not too dissimilar to Shankland, is that they'll drop and look to build and look to try and pull centre backs out. So that's the big thing about Hibs, is they'll try and move your defence around. And if you've got at least one who's kind of just present, sitting, you've got a lot of cover at the back, that's massive. I think there's a big decision to be made in the wide positions. You got Stephen Kingsley. If it's a back three, will start at left wing back. I think he has really rediscovered his form, and he's been bordering on excellent in recent weeks. And then the big decisions on the right hand side, because we saw a fire against Ross County, and then the impact that every time Alan Forrest had coming off the bench. And I think the big thing is you don't Hibs push their fullbacks really high. Whether it's a Beater, Stevenson on the left and Lewis Miller on the right, they push their fullbacks really high. And I think with Forrest, that'll push one of them back. That'll push the left wing, the fullback back. Whereas Ofaya's would maybe be a bit too defensive, I think, especially again at home in a derby.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, because we certainly saw that in Dingwall. Ofaya was really struggling to get beyond his man, and then as soon as Alan Forrest came on, we immediately saw him start stretching the play. And like you say, that's a good way of again just nullifying some threat that Hibs offer in that area of the park. I think as well, when you talk about the fact that the strikers like Vente and Lafondra, they tend to drop deep and try and drag players out of position. Again, I think that's where it's really important to have like a number 6 in the team, someone who is going to sit at the base of midfield, and then when that does happen, they can then start try to win the ball back off those players rather than dragging a centre half up the park. So again, I think that again, I wouldn't be entirely surprised if we saw Beningame come in and do that, but I don't know if he's maybe quite got if he's quite dynamic enough, I suppose, to get around that area of the park. But I mean, but you are right though when you talk about a lot of this game is going to be won and lost in the flanks. I think that's absolutely correct. Obviously, we know that the threat that Youan and Boyle have, they're both fast players. So Youan's an excellent dribbler, and they can really cause problems for you and get in behind. And like you say, the way that's going to happen is, the fullbacks are going to push right all the way up. So like you say, Kingsley's going to, he has been good in recent weeks, and again, he's going to have to be really solid defensively, but perhaps even more importantly than that, he's going to have to get forward. But to be fair to him, that's not a problem he's had. And, even in the game against St Mirren, he was one of the most advanced players in the park for Hearts during the first half. Getting him forward is not the problem, but making sure he's got options when he gets the ball in those forward areas, that has been a problem. So I think we need to make sure that I think Hearts definitely need to make sure that they are making the most of those wide opportunities. And I think, like you say, Alan Forrest has certainly made a good case for inclusion, just on the basis that his pace alone does put that pause into the opposition. It does make them go, oh, hang on a minute, we can't push up quite as far. And I think that's going to be important, particularly if Obita plays at left back, because he's definitely got a bit of pace for him. He's got more legs than someone like Lewis Stevenson as well. And I think having someone who is able to just give them that little worry that, oh God, they might be creeping in behind, that alone is enough to really slow down Hibs' build-up play. So I think that'll be interesting. And I think as well, just in the midfield in general, it'll be interesting to see, because we know that Hibs will almost certainly play with just 2 midfielders, and Hearts will probably play with, they'll play with 3 regardless, whether it's the 4-2-3-1 or the 3-1-4-2, so I think that it's going to be really important for that midfield 3 to be constantly shifting around, making sure they're making the most of the fact that they outnumber Hibs in the middle, and then try to make because I think that's where there could be some gaps in this Hibs team. I think that's an area where Hearts can hurt them. So again, it's all about making sure that they keep the ball, they use it properly, and then they've still got that little bit of creativity in the final third to unlock. So again, that's why we look at somebody like George Grant, for instance, and you think he's probably quite well suited to this game, and obviously he's been in decent form recently as well. So, and then obviously Boyce does give you that extra option off the bench. So I think that, I think central areas, I think the wide areas will be important in terms of sort of individual battles, but I think the central areas are where Hearts, if they play smart, they can really hurt Hibs.
I think that I was just going to come on to that essentially. I think that's where the derby is so important, because we've not mentioned Alex Lowry. He, like Forrest, has probably done enough to warrant a start. However, I'm not sure I would start him in the derby, because the derby is frenetic. It's hectic. It's a battle, and that's what you expect from a derby. Even what you want from a derby, especially the opening stages, where it's up and at them. The crowd are all fired up, and it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the match. And you don't want to put Alex Lowry, when he came on the centre midfield, into a position where he might just get lost. If the ball was just pinballing around, and whereas he'd probably be more effective as an option off the bench, certainly in this game, where both teams will probably find it refreshing in that they won't be coming up against a team who are happy to sit in and give them 65% possession. The big one for me, the big return for me, is Cammy Devlin. Having him fit, he was expected to return to training on Monday. Having him fit and back in the starting 11, he is massive, because this is a guy who seems. So I spoke to a coach for a piece on the site last week, and he said he was perfect for Scottish football. This Cammy Devlin was a guy born to play in the Edinburgh Derby, because that's exactly what it's an environment where he thrives in, where it is 100 miles an hour, where he can get stuck in about. Referees will probably be slightly more lenient as well, and he can be confrontational in a good way. He's seen photos of him past where he's got under the skin of Hibs players. That's really important, because having three bodies in there against Hibs 2, Jago and Newell have built a good partnership, it seems, and they have been playing well. Jago's more likely drop in beside the centre backs. Newell gets on the ball and kind of play makes. They have to do a hell of a lot of work in that in the 4-4-2, because it's so attacking, and they have to cover lots of space. So they have to basically protect the defence, but also link with the attack. Whereas Hearts, having that 3, they should be able to get an element of control, which again is that balance between it being 100 miles an hour, but having the kind of taking the sting out of the game at times. I think Hearts can do that, and I would go with with Devlin coming in for Denham, because I think you've got a nice balance there with Neuenhoff sitting. What really impressed me against Ross County was, yes, he gets on the ball, he looks to play, he looks to play forward, but importantly, he was really good defensively. There was a couple of times in the second half where Ross County maybe got in behind or down the left, he would come across and he would intercept or make a tackle. So I think you've got a really nice balance there with him sitting. You've got Devlin, who can just charge around. I think charging is a really good quality in the Edinburgh Derby. And then you've got George Grant, who is more forward thinking. He can get on the ball. He can play as a 6'10" or an 8, which gives you that versatility. And the big thing, we'll come on to the attack in a second, but if you're playing Vargas and Shanklin in attack, it's a system. They've got the personnel there that can easily change into a different shape as well during the game. So Naismith could easily, if it's not working, change shape without actually having to change any of the players. So moving forward, Vargas, because he has certain qualities that I don't think anyone else in the Hearts squad has, bound to start. It's, dare I say it, the perfect game for him to get off the mark, whether it's an assist or a goal. But Shanklin, we kind of touched on it on Saturday after the Ross County game. There's been talk of needing to drop Shanklin or give him a rest. He's not in the Scotland squad, so he's going to get a couple of weeks off, which is a couple of weeks off, a couple of weeks where he's going to be he can be inactive, which is really positive. But for me, it would be absolutely nonsensical to drop Shanklin for a derby, because this is a guy who's made the fixture his own since coming into Hearts with 4 goals in 5 games.
Yeah, and I just think that Shanklin absolutely must start. He's the captain, apart from anything else, like that alone means he's definitely going to start. He's also comfortably Hearts' top scorer this season, despite this sort of barren run that he's on. And like you say, he's got an excellent record in the derby, so of course he's going to start. Yeah, he has to start. I understand that fans are perhaps a bit frustrated, and certain. I'm sure Shankland himself is as well. The fact that because like we say, we've never seen him go this long without scoring a goal at Hearts. It's unusual, but at the same time, like we all know he's an excellent player. We all know that he's the best striker that Hearts have got, and he's the best one they've had for a while. And I think that every player, every striker is going to have runs like this where it doesn't quite go for them. And a lot of it as well is it would be different if he was getting played through for 1-on-1s every 5 minutes and then skying it over the bar. You kind of go, all right, maybe. But let's face it, he's not had much service in recent weeks. Because Hearts have struggled to create open chances from open play. They don't make loads of them, and that as a result of that, he's not getting the chances. He's maybe snatching at them a little bit. You can look at individual chances and go, he probably should have scored there. Like maybe away to St Mirren, that chance right to the death. Maybe he should score that. Fine, or maybe you expect a player Shankland's quality to score that. But
that's the only real chance he's had, arguably, since.
Right, yeah. So I guess that's part of it. I think he's not having the service. Again, if he was, like missing penalties or missing tap-ins from a few yards out and all that, you kind of go, all right, maybe. But I think he's just more kind of emblematic of, or he's the end result, I suppose, of the fact that Hearts have struggled with creativity in the final third this season. So I don't think it's anything to worry about. He's still an excellent player, and because I've been a bit baffled by some of the comments from people suggesting that he should be dropped. Like I get that he's not in good form, but he's still Hearts' best player, in my opinion.
And I suppose we move on to before we finish, like where Hearts can. We kind of talked about Hibs' threat. We've talked about how Hearts can line up in the balancing system. In terms of where Hibs have areas of concern. Firstly, David Marshall is a goalkeeper who has regressed. I think they potentially tried to replace him this summer. They brought in a goalkeeper from Charlton Athletic. He's been injured. Marshall's came in. He had a good game against, had a really good save against St Johnstone, kept a clean sheet against St Johnstone, kept a clean sheet against Dundee. However, there's been times this season where he's looked fallible. If you look at the stats, he's not performing too well in terms of goals prevention. Whereas on the flip side, Xander Clark, yes, he made a bad error against St Mirren. Has, in terms of shot stopping, had a really, really good season. That's one area, and Hibs have been guilty of giving up chances from crosses into the box, which you look at Shankland, that's something he thrives on. But also they look to play out from the back, and they're coming up against a team who will hunt them, and especially at Tynecastle, be really aggressive. We can see in the stats that Hearts are a very proactive team outside of the ball, out with having the ball. So that could be not only fall into Hearts' hands, but ideal for getting the crowd on side very, very, very early on, because again, we've talked about slow starts. A fast start in a derby gets the fans up, and then it can just have a snowball effect where they can make Hibs almost suffocate Hibs.
No, definitely. And I think that's a good point. The fact that Hearts probably will be pressing quite high up the park, and I think for that reason we might see Cammy Devlin in a similar position to the one he played against St Mirren, where he was part of a midfield three, but quite advanced on the right and pushing quite high up. Because, like you say, the guy kind of thrives on chaos. In a similar way that John McGinn does, where the ball's like kind of bouncing around. He's very reactive. He's very instinctive, and he's just when nobody's really got control. I feel like that's where Cammy Devlin's at his best. So I think that I'd imagine he'll be pressing quite high up the park because he's excellent at it and he's got seemingly boundless energy. So I think it'll be really important for him getting forward. And like you say as well, there's going to be, if Shankland and Vargas and perhaps Grant as well, if they're all pushing up, pushing forward, getting pressure on the opposition, it can really help stop Hibs from building out. So I think that I think we're likely to see a pretty high press on Saturday, again for the other reason as well. It's the derby and players want to go chase after the ball. It's hard to keep your discipline if you're not meant to start pressing until they're 30 yards up the park. But if someone's 20 yards and they're just dawdling, like, yeah, you're going to want to just chase
Yeah.
after it and, get a foot in and, hear the roar of the crowd and all the rest of it.
That's
So,
one thing I dislike about the build up to Derby. You speak to players, speak to managers, and they talk about it being like trying to just treat it as another game, or it's like no different to other game. What a load of absolute nonsense! It's a completely different game, a completely different environment. That aspect of it goes out the window. You play it differently. You have to play it differently. You have to play. Yeah, you can't go out and be too hot-headed, but you have to play it with emotion, because if you don't play it with emotion, it's you. I think you'll find yourself coming up short, because you have to you have to feed off the crowd's emotion and play with kind of more fire, more focus, and let yourself kind of let everyone off the reins a bit.
No, definitely. That's that's what we'll come to expect. It's not going to be kind of some sort of tactical 4D chess match. Where neutrals are going to be able to look on and go, oh yes, I see what's going on. No, it will be chaotic. It will be a bit mad. Dare I say, I can imagine that the quality might not be of the best either, because generally that's what happens in these games. But it's going to be a very well fought occasion, and that it's going to be full of both sets of players just giving 110%. But, like you say, they're going to, like, Hearts fans will feed off the crowd. Hearts players will feed off the crowd. Hibs players will probably feed off the crowd as well. But that's what makes it such a compelling spectacle. That's the reason why we all love it so much.
I think you nailed hit the nail on the head there by saying no one really pays it. We've just spent 20 minutes talking about tactics, and then but really comes down to it's a lot more than that. Yeah,
exactly. It's all secondary. It's all secondary. This is a waste of time. Actually, don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, who cares about tactics? Just run more, battle more, win second balls, and it will set you up for success. And I suppose finishing on how important the derby is to kind of the season, but like Stephen Naismith, and we've talked about it, the mood music changing in the last couple of weeks with the wins. This is where he can buy so much credit, getting a win over Hibs. He's obviously been in charge for 2 games and against Hibs, interim spell, lost the first one after replacing Nielsen. Drew the second one, but it turned out to be a very good draw, because played with 10 men for a lot the game, but still finished 4th ahead of Hibs. A win tomorrow, especially going into an international break, will just keep that confidence building, that momentum building, and it is the type of game which can not be season defining, but can be a defining game within the season in terms of the direction that Hearts go after this.
No, absolutely. I remember earlier this week I was speaking to Ryan McGowan about the derby and how he prepared for it and the aftermath and all the rest of it. And he made the point of, if you put in a good performance in the derby, that does, it does buy you a few games with the fans. A few games later, if you make a mistake or you're not playing great, they tend to remember the derby performance, and that's what, that kind of keeps you ticking over. And I would argue the same thing. That it does apply to Naismith as well. You're absolutely right. I think as well, particularly with the following 3 games after the derby. Obviously, Celtic and then Rangers twice,
and Livingston in between.
Oh, and Livingston as well, of course. Yeah, sorry. You just think, some points on the board would be welcome. And again, it keeps that feel good factor going into those games as well. So I think that, you're right. I mean, it's one of these games where if Hearts were to lose it, I think we would see the pressure start ratcheting up on Naismith again quite quickly. But again, if they were to win and they get a 3rd win in a row, all of a sudden people were saying, "Oh, it's all falling into place under Naismith. It's all working, and it's all moving in the right direction." So yeah, particularly with such a long gap in between this game and the next, you're right. The result, whether it's positive or negative, it will fester and it won't go away. So if it's a positive result, that's great for the next 2 weeks. But if it ends up being a disappointing result or a poor performance, you're right, that is going to linger for a little while. So I think you're right. I think it's going to be. It's got big implications for the rest of Hearts' season, for the remainder of it, I think. but without, like you say, without it being directly defining how that season's going to go.
Yeah. Well, there we go. That is the Edinburgh Derby preview. Be sure to check heartstandard.co.uk. You can subscribe for £1 for 6 months, £12 for 12 months. And we have got plenty of content up this week. You've got analysis on Frankie Kent and Lauren Shankland. Frankie Kent's coming in and replacing Halkett. You've got Shankland and kind of looking at the goal struggles there and providing context with the way Hearts are playing and his role within that. James has spoke to 3 Derby Day veterans who talked about their experience in terms of how to prepare for the Derby. We've got a piece on the 22-game unbeaten run. There is also a piece on Hibs and what to expect from there, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, and of course, our interview with Andreas Velichka, who has a good Derby record and scored twice on his very first Derby. So there's loads up on the site, and there'll loads be going up this today on. It's press conference day, so we'll have kind of team news, we'll have predicted lineups and reaction from Hearts, Stephen Naismith, and I believe Callum Newhoff is the player who's speaking to the press ahead of the game. And then we'll also have tomorrow's coverage of the game. Both of us will be at it, and we will be back with when the team news drops. So until then, goodbye. Always forget to be ready to end the stream, and there it is.